Merry Meet Annie here, and welcome to Thursday on Pagan Perspective. Also, welcome for those of you who are always part of his fan club. This is Mr. Ernie saying hello. He's being very grumpy today. So he is with me because he is always with me whenever I do a video. Usually snoozing, which is why he's fading even as I talk now. You'll hear him snoring very soon. He's especially welcome as I record this video because the topic is totems and familiars. A couple of different viewers with questions that were along the same lines. Iris Crescent Moon asked us if we use or have used animal guides or animal totems in our practice. If so, how? And do you consider them to be the same as familiars? I don't consider them to be the same thing as familiars. To me, they are very different. I do have a Canada goose who is my totem, who has been my totem now since I was in my late 20s. And there was a very specific set of meditations and guides by my first teachers that took me and those who were studying along with me to a place to meet what would become our animal guides. An animal guide to me is an animal which teaches and guides me, which is a representation of the wiser self of the universe, the collective experience of the universe in a way. It is everything the animal represents in the way that it can teach us about that. So in a way, a collection of things that can inspire me as a human if I learn the lessons this particular animal has to offer to me. At another level, at a very deep level, our animal guides were required for us to have a partnership with before. In my earliest circles, we were permitted to do deep journey work or shadow work. And I do have, I think, a video that I did specifically about the Underworld and that kind of journeying that has to do with the animal guide, the spirit guide. I'm going to link that to this video in the event that that is something that anyone would like to know a little bit more about. So the animal guide is a reminder of the lessons that all of the natural world teaches us, a partnership with it to experience this world from a different perspective and all the knowledge that comes with that. And it's also in the tradition in which I first met and grew my relationship with the Canada goose and my brothers and sisters with their spirit guides. It is the journey partner that travels with us between the worlds, to all the worlds. So there were very specific things that a spirit guide in animal form was. It was about wisdom in the natural sense, another perspective to view the world, to view myself in relation, and very, very much as anything, a traveling partner. A traveling partner to work through astral travels, travels between the worlds. The power of being in more than one world at the same time, but also, very importantly, the power of returning home to the world which is ours by nature, this physical one. So, spirit guide in an animal sense to me, very different from what I see a familiar being. A familiar to me is a creature totally of this world, who permits us to learn through the way they walk this world another way, and often it seems a better way that we can walk this world. Now, I currently don't have a familiar. I've only ever had one familiar. He was with me for, I guess, about 15 years, and he was a dog. No cats for this witch. Always had cats. But the only animal that has ever presented itself as a familiar was my Emmett, who was a Doberman Pit Bull mix. Yes, he was a little bit of an unusual familiar. I have a video about the power of the familiar, which I am going to also attach if that's something you're interested in learning a little bit more about from my experience of it. I have never had another animal which has presented itself to me that intimately and that close. So I would say I've only ever had an animal familiar once. Doesn't mean I won't have one again at some point. I could. I was kind of hoping Ernie might get there, but you know, Ernie's very self-centered. And he wants to be with me when I'm doing things because he wants to demand my attention, as he has been, as I am, as I am recording this video. And for him it's more like, what's in it for me? I want to be in the middle of it. He feels very close to me. And it's really not about sharing the experience. My relationship with my one and only familiar that I've had in my life so far is I could be with that animal and be totally animal. I understood the simple beauty of the world when I saw it through his eyes. He traveled with me when we were in circle. He, by nature, being beautifully animal, lived in more than one world all the time and was aware of the physical and the non-physical. The difficult thing about explaining why is any pet that we care for and have a relationship with not automatically considered our familiar, that's a hard one to explain because I certainly love all the beasties that have gone through my life, cat and dog both. And we all know how close I am to Ernie, who's snoring in my lap at this point. But a familiar, there is a bond there that is at the soul level. It is deeper than the relationship of human and pet, human and animal. It's almost like a partnership where I could lay down with Emmett, my familiar, and I could be him completely. I was no longer human in those moments. I could truly be one with him. I don't think he ever was one with me in that sense because he didn't need it. He was complete. He was whole. He was very sensitive in circle to energy raising. He actually contributed to energy raising by his presence. He was sensitive to my gods. They knew him. He knew them. He reacted to the magic work of the circle and any spell work or meditation work that I did at any point. He knew it. He felt it. He was one with it. And by that I don't mean he laid quietly at my feet like this one's doing with the snoring. He was sound asleep with the snoring. There, I'll go to sleep there now. This one can certainly be that right now. If I were meditating, it would be so comforting to be with me and be calm. But Emmett was with me. He was with me at the energetic level, the emotional level. He traveled with me is the only way I know how to describe what's the difference between a familiar and a pet, even if it's a much beloved pet. A big sleeping lump of a pet at the moment. Ernie's never going to be a familiar because Ernie thinks about Ernie. He is beast and beautiful just by being beast and beautiful. But the difference between my experience of him and Emmett was Emmett and I walked between the worlds together. We traveled together. I could experience the wholeness of creation in a way through Emmett, through our relationship, through our bond. You want to lay down now and go to sleep? You want to settle down now? Now I'm full of dog hairs. There's a difference between having a much beloved pet and having a working partner. Emmett was one with me in all the work that I did. There was never a circle in our house that he wasn't part of. He always laid his big 80-pound self in the middle of it. He was always present and always part of, not just being there. In a way, he was in our circles because all of my coven mates knew him well. He was a portal which opened our circles to the other worlds, and he was also the ground which kept us tied to this world. His animalness came in very handy for grounding and centering a circle. So spirit guide to me is a very different thing. It is not an animal in actuality. It is an animal in essence, in poetry, in art, It is learning everything you can about the animal and what it could teach. It is using the animal as a figment, in a way, as a flight of fancy, a teacher, a guide, and if you're interested more in the shadow work, the one who travels especially to the underworld with you and brings you back is your anchor to this world. It's more like the essence of the animal. A familiar is the animal in its purest, most basic, most wonderful animal self, real and here and now and present, but not just a beloved pet. I'd like Ernie or even our Min Pin to be my familiar, but that's not going to happen. There is a connection that happens. It's almost as if you know each other at another level. You recognize each other. The familiar experience is one where you are as familiar to the familiar. It works both ways. It's not just that it is the familiar to you, but it works the other way too. So the difference between the two to me is the familiar is here and now. It's where the relationship begins. You travel together, you work together, you are magic partners. You are working partners. The spirit guide. The spirit guide is something that's come to you almost in a dream. You may have studied and chosen one and then became expert in it and developed a relationship with it, or one may introduce itself to you and you need to take it from there. But either way, you're going to knock the camera, honey. You're stretching and knocking the camera. It's always a creature not quite of this world. It's like it swoops through this world and inspires you and moves you and teaches you and returns to where it comes from. And where it comes from is not of this place, where our beloved familiars are so perfectly and beautifully of this place. So to me, yes, there is a big difference between the two. And Crazy Girl asked us, let me squint over here to see what she asked us. She asked us specifically about familiars. What do you think happens to them after they pass on from this world? Do you believe they guide us from the spirit world, or they reincarnate to join us again? Interestingly, the familiar who spent 15 years that closely connected to me chose to move on. I held him in his arms as he died, and I knew he was not only gone, but completely gone. Never heard from him again. Never. So the question was, what do you think happens to them after they pass from this world? I think, like us, it's different from animal to animal. Oh, how I would love to have Emmett visit me again. Oh, I'd just give about anything for that. Hasn't happened. He did whatever it was he was meant to do, and he moved completely on. He severed ties to the here and now. Do you believe that they guide us from the spirit world, or that maybe they reincarnate to join us again? I'm going to say that my experience has been no. And it's going to be because the animals that I have loved and been part of my life, my companion animals and my familiar, have had a perfect simplicity. It's like they lived their life completely, they experienced their life completely, unlike we humans who have so much that gets in the way of that, and they've moved on. Whatever the purpose is that we come back, that we return as humans, it's because we are incomplete and we are still learning and growing. My own philosophy about animals and their return is they're complete, they're perfect. They don't have loose ends when they leave the way we humans do. I don't know what that means about their function, their purpose here, their higher purpose. I do know that they live on outside the physical because of the contacts I have had with someone they've passed over. But at least all the animals in my life have not had the need or the desire to linger on in the physical world because they've lived it fully and they've moved on from it. That's my experience of the animals in my life, and a little bit about how I see the difference between spirit guides and familiars, which I see as very, very different. I wish you all mirth and reverence. Merry part.